Hey guys, I am the Comics Kid 2099, and this video was originally going to be something entirely different than what it is now. In fact, the video I was going to do will still maybe perhaps show up in the next week or two. But I was originally going to do this one off the cuff, and I noticed I was spending way too much time on what was video. Then I scrapped that and decided to script it out. Then I noticed that once again I still was spending way too much time on the first thing that I wanted to talk about. So then I got to this point where I decided that this could be its own video. So you might maybe be able to tell what direction I was going to go with the video that was originally going to be this, but if not, you will still hopefully see that video next week or sometime very soon. So I think it is a crying shame that Marvel is not putting out an Exiles comic book. It's a fairly unique concept, even when you consider that it's kind of been done elsewhere before. It's 5 or 6 mutants from different realities setting right what once went wrong, and then moving on to the next reality, hoping to make it back to their respective homes. We've seen this before in Quantum Leap and Sliders, but in comics, this concept is more interesting than about 80% of the premises out there right now. Now let me make something clear. Just because I'm saying that the premise is not as exciting as what we're getting in Exiles does not mean that I am saying that 80% of all comics are bad. Just that, for instance, the status quo of the Avengers right now is that they are a team of superheroes and they save the world regularly. Not exactly earth-shattering. So the Exiles is quite a bit different, even if it isn't exactly earth-shattering itself. But for whatever reason, we have not had an Exiles comic book since 2009, and even then, the last several years of the Exiles were not as revered by fans as the stuff that came in the first few years of the franchise. And I feel like there's a good reason for that, although admittedly, I haven't read Jeff Parker's limited run on the title that was the last we saw of this franchise. When Judd Winnick was writing the series, his goal was to focus more on the characters and growth of characters, and the alternate realities would only be the backdrop, and would never take precedent over the characters. I feel like this was dropped as future writers came in on the series. Which reality they were going to next became more important than the characters on the team, at least it seemed to me. So this is my pitch for what I'd be doing if given the chance to revive the Exiles as a concept and an ongoing series. There would be very little references to the past 21 volumes of Exiles stories. All that really needs to happen is for someone to take the premise of 5 or 6 characters jumping around different realities, fixing things, and then jumping to the next reality. The first character I would use is Sir Nicholas Fury from the story 1602. If you've never read the Neil Gaiman Andy Kubert story, at the end, Sir Nicholas Fury takes the anomaly Captain America through a portal which is supposed to stabilize all of the damage that was done to this reality, and we never saw this version of Nick Fury again. I'd love to see a Nick Fury who does not have all of the technology or resources at his disposal that 616, Ultimate, and movie version of Nick Fury all have. This would be a chance to show us a Fury who is smart and resourceful without those things. The next character I would use is Bloodstorm from Mutant X. Mutant X was a reality where, instead of one crucial change in the timeline altering everything, many different things happened, turning this world into an awful place to live. In this reality, when the X-Men fought Dracula, instead of succeeding in keeping him from turning Storm into his bride, they failed and Storm became a vampire known as Bloodstorm. One thing I liked about the early-ish Exile stuff was that not every character was superheroic. You had characters like Magik and Namora who were willing to decapitate or murder if it meant getting home. And I think both Fury and Bloodstorm would definitely be those kinds of characters in this series. The next character that I would use in this pitch would be Mainframe from MC2. If you are not familiar with MC2, it's basically a future set roughly 30-ish years from today, and Peter Parker and Mary Jane's daughter, Mayday, is Spider-Girl. There was an entire franchise of titles set in this timeline, and Mainframe was an AI inhabiting Tony Stark's armor. To keep things from getting too boring, I would find a way to merge this Mainframe with another Mainframe, the one from the Guardians of the Galaxy future. In that world, the Vision was an AI that no longer had a body. I would find some way to have the future Vision from Guardians of the Galaxy inhabiting this suit of armor created by the MC2 Tony Stark, and then he's out jumping across dimensions with the rest of these guys. The next character that I would use is Strange 2099. This character is the granddaughter of Doctor Strange from the original 2099 comics. There's very little information about this character because she only appeared in something like 5 issues total. She's mainly here because I love Doctor Strange and obviously the 2099 universe. I'd play her as the Sorcerer Supreme from her world, but still very much learning how to deal with her powers and not be able to fix every problem the team encounters. The final character for the field team that I would use is Blink. I know I said I'd be cutting most references to the previous Exiles stories, but I could not resist. I like the idea that Blink is constantly part of this team and never really gets to have happiness, either in love with Mimic or staying on a peaceful world without having to keep superheroing around the multiverse. Plus, I like the idea of several hard-headed characters like Fury, Bloodstorm, and Blink all being on the same team and constantly butting heads with each other. I originally had Blink as the Time Broker, which could still work at some point in the series, as she was always one of the characters complaining about the missions being too morally reprehensible, and it'd be a neat twist for her to be the one sending them out on these missions. But I decided to go with the Scarlet Centurion from the original Squadron Supreme universe. He's basically like King the Conqueror or Immortus, so he was a bad guy. But that would be where things get interesting, at least in my opinion. Why is this guy sending the Exiles to save the multiverse? The obvious answer would be that he's having them do his evil bidding and they just don't know it. But that story was basically already done in the original Exiles series with a different despot, so I wouldn't want to take it in that direction just because it's kind of been done once before and I don't really think you can do that particular story in many different ways. And that'd be about it. Naturally, this is such a premise where if you get tired of one character, you can dump them back in their reality and bring in someone new. That was an element that made the Exiles series eternally unpredictable, and I loved it for that. Though if I was going to be doing this as an ongoing, I probably would create alternate versions of existing characters for later members of the team. I like the idea of using existing characters from specific alternate realities, at least at first, but if this was going to go on for a while, then eventually I would not have a problem with replacing a character with, say, a brand new version of Havoc from some as yet unknown reality. That's just an example though, but this is something that the Exiles comic did a great deal, and I think it wouldn't be a problem to do this again if the series was resurrected, as it would keep things fresh by adding new characters and getting rid of characters that people maybe are getting tired of. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video as much as I did making it. I don't think I'll be doing something like this again anytime soon. Mostly because, as I've said a couple of times on this channel, I feel like if you have an idea for a story that you would like to see in, for example, Spider-Man, usually you can change the names of a few characters and alter a few events and tweak the status quo, and you can make it into your very own story. The only reason I'm not going in that direction here is because really there isn't any way to tweak or change the premise of the Exiles without turning it into something entirely different. And as you may notice, all of these guys are basically characters who, if you tried to change their names, in many cases you wouldn't really have anything left over that is from the original idea of what would I do with the Exiles. For example, part of the fun would be seeing how a being of pure technology like Mainframe would react to a being of pure magic like Doctor Strange's granddaughter. If I tried to turn this into an original property, part of the fun would be lost, at least in my humble. So yeah, you won't be seeing many other videos like this, if any. But I thought it'd be fun to do at least one like this. And if you like this video, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And I will be back tomorrow with a different kind of video. Until then, have a great day.